Congressman Latta, I just want to start out by saying if this had been a Republican speech, you guys would have stood up for some of those lines. Why didn't you stand up for anything?
Well, we stood up. You know, the main thing is that in my district and a lot of the districts across the country, we're worried about jobs. And the people back home have been saying the same thing over and over and over. And it was so well put to me by a factory worker this past summer. He said, what are you talking about health care? If I haven't got a job, I can't put a roof over my family's head and put food on the table. That's what people back home are worried about. And they've seen Congress and this administration not talking about the issues that are near and dear to them, and that's really putting food on the table.
Well, as you, I'm not from the 5th District in Ohio, but I am from Ohio. I'm very concerned about Ohio. I'm very concerned about the job situation. I'm very concerned about what's going to create jobs. But tax cuts are not alone in doing it. So what would you propose that are really going to bring jobs back to what was the largest, one of the largest manufacturing states in the Union?
Well, it's what my people tell me. Number one, they do have to talk about tax cuts because we have the second highest corporate tax rate in the world. Number two, when you have massive government regulations coming down on these companies. You know, I've got plants in my district that say one more regulation. I don't care if it's EPA, if it's from water or smog regulations, they're out. And that's a real concern because, again, these companies are out there struggling right now to compete against countries overseas. Third, they saw what happened here in the House with the cap and tax legislation, which is the largest national energy tax ever. So, you know, they look at that. And then they throw health care on top of it we've been talking about down here, and you put all these issues together. That's what's preventing a lot of companies from doing anything. A lot of our companies right now aren't working 40-hour weeks. They're working 32-hour weeks. And so, you know, and I serve on budget, when the budget director is before us today from CBO, you know, they're saying the exact same thing I already know. It's going to be a very slow recovery because we got to get these jobs back up to at least 40 hours before they even start thinking about adding anybody else. So it's a very tough situation, and businesses aren't out there going to just listen to a speech tonight and say, oh, this is great, I'm going to jump in and start, and I'm going to create more jobs. The federal government, one of the things that's slowly sinking in this place down here is the federal government doesn't create jobs. We consume wealth. It's the private enterprise that is the ones out there that are going to create these jobs, and those are the jobs we have to have for the future.
Okay, well, I agree with you on the regulation issue. I mean, because you can't regulate, you can't compete with that. I mean, even Etch-a-Sketch, which was I guess they were an Indiana company.
No, Bryan, Ohio.
Was Bryan, Ohio? Okay, all right. So Etch-a-Sketch, a famous Ohio company. I thought it was Indiana, but it was our great state of Ohio. They had to go, they did everything they could to stay in the United States, and they couldn't do it. So how many, but now that the jobs are gone, what is going to bring them back?
Well, Ohio Art's still in Bryan. They're the parent.
They are? Okay.
They're the parent company of Etch-a-Sketch. But again, what it's going to take is making sure we do all these things because all these businesses talk about the exact same thing. You know, the other thing that I didn't talk about a little bit earlier is financing. You know, I have a lot of companies out there that have zero debt that can't get any lending. And, you know, the Federal Reserve's out there, they have really clamped down to the point I think that they've got to go back and look what they're telling their field examiners when they're in these banks because the banks no longer are making...
Ohio Savings AmTrust went just down the tubes, right?
Well, then, you know, our problem is financing. And then at the same time, you know, when we talk about connecting the dots and trying to get everything together, I think this government in Washington has got to realize that the law of physics, for every action there is a reaction. And, you know, we've got a situation with the FDIC where they want to, you know, they say we want 13 quarters of premiums up front. You tell these small banks that, and they're going to say, wait a minute, now how am I supposed to loan any money out to the people that need the dollars? So it's this vicious cycle here that we have got to have a plan that businesses out there can work from. Because if they don't have, if they see the same thing of Washington as usual, we're not going to see this economy get moving.
Congressman Latta, you, if you were to try and call up President Obama and say, look, I really want you to come to my district. I'm a Republican district, and I want you to talk to the people, and I want you to listen to what they're saying and what our businesses are saying. What do you think he'd say?
Well, I've asked that from different people in the administration right now. The best thing to do is come out to these areas. And I've talked to some Democrats that said the exact same thing who represent districts very much like mine across the Midwest.
You've got a lot of districts like you.
And what we need to do is we got to have the bureaucrats and the politicians that don't get out of Washington need to come out to the districts because if you fly in for 1 hour and say, this is what I'm going to do for you. That's not what we're going to do to you. And it's really, you got to come out there and day after day after day, or just spend a full day and just find out and talk to these people, and you'll find out, and talk to the people that work that are running the machines on the floor, because they're the ones whose jobs are on the line just as much as anybody else in management.
Congressman Latta, thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Have a great day.